Welcome to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's live streaming interview series, where leading new thought teachers, speakers, and authors share the intimate stories behind the 10 best spiritual books that inspired them the most on their spiritual journey. From well-known classics to hidden gems you might never have heard of, the No BS Spiritual Book Club saves you time and money by sharing reliable recommendations from those who've walked the path before you. The No BS Spiritual Book Club, the only no BS guide to the best spiritual books to inspire your own journey of self-discovery. Here's your host, founder of the No BS Spiritual Book Club, Sandie Sedgbeer.
Hello and welcome. 22 years ago, I stumbled upon an extraordinary system that not only accurately depicted my life's course and future, but also shed light on the intricate web of connections in my life. Robert Camp discovered the ancient method for determining people's destinies in 1988 after a friend showed him a copy of Sacred Symbols of the Ancients. He was already giving astrological readings, but he was stunned by the accuracy of these divination cards, and he recognized the spiritual underpinnings of this amazing system and dedicated himself to making it known to the world, and subsequently published 2 internationally best-selling books, The Cards of Destiny and The Love Cards. I know firsthand the influence that Robert Camp's work has had on the lives of many in the realm of self-knowledge, spirituality, and divination, which is why I'm excited to have him here today, not only to share more about the science of the cards and numbers, which we'll hear more about later in the show, but also to tell us about the 10 books that inspired him on his life journey. Robert Camp, welcome.
Thank you, Sandie. That was a beautiful introduction. Thank you.
I'm really pleased to have you here because, I'm all about sharing books, and your books have been so pivotal in my life. I've traveled around the world many times in those 22 years, and I've had to shed books along the way, but yours never get shed.
That's a compliment. That's definitely a compliment. I'm glad to hear that.
So
Yeah.
tell us about your relationship with books. I mean, I know that you've said you loved books as a child, but you were never interested in fiction.
No, as a child, I was always really interested in what there was a lot of unhappiness in my childhood, a lot of conflict growing up in my family. And I was looking for, like, how do you find happiness? I would tell myself, what's the key to happiness? That's how I would say it. I want to know what the key to happiness is. So that I just naturally was drawn to finding books. I mean, they're supposed to know something, right? So, I started reading books and I found answers in books. And I have a knack, actually. And I think for those of you who know astrology, anybody who has Jupiter in the sign of books, which is Gemini, you've got a knack for books, like you just happen to find the right books at the right time. So books have just shown up in my life over and over again, exactly when I needed them, and have taken me from one place to the next, and I have my little bookshelf of book friends that I will always have with me. And it's really funny because I don't really read anymore. I got to a point where I said, I got to stop reading and start writing. I got to start writing some stuff.
Yeah.
So, but they've always been books that have helped me. And when I made my list for you, there are some that you would not call spiritual books there, but all of these books changed my life. And I consider them my best friends.
So your first book on your list you read when you were 17. It's called The Mystic Path to Cosmic Power by Vernon Howard, and it was published in 1985. Was that the first spiritual book you ever read?
Yeah, I think it was, and it had been recommended to me by one of my uncles. He wasn't spiritual, but he was all about self-help like, you can make your life whatever you want. And that's kind of what that book is connected to, kind of like Think and Grow Rich, which is also on my list. So these books both occurred around the same time. And there were some other minor books too at that same time, but these are the ones that stand out. The Mystic Path to Cosmic Power was different, like, because it went into a mystical, area, which Think and Grow Rich didn't really go into that, the sort of mystical side of things. And it was my first exposure to the whole word mystical and what that means, and what's it all about. And my uncle he relayed some stories to me, and he told me to get this book that he relates to, about how uh, he created like a workshop in his mind where he would go and get answers to really intense problems. And he was one of the guys that worked. They did all the math for the first lunar landing. His company, I forget what it's called. It's an initial. But this was like before computers, right? And they did it like all by hand. And so he was like a genius. This guy, he was a genius. But he's the first one that, like, just talking to him for like a few days when I visited him, he got me basically on my spiritual path and led me to these two books. It's the
I
beginning.
got this particular book. I hadn't heard of it, and it was interesting because back in the 80s, a lot of books, in the table of contents, they would give a number of little passages to tell you what was in each chapter, and this one said that it contains there is a way out, the greatest secret on earth, the miraculous message of mysticism, how to perform right action, and the one I like, the strange case of hypnotized humanity.
Yeah, I mean, there's truth there in that book.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the whole story, or it may not take you everywhere you want to go, but it was exactly what I needed at that time. And it got me like looking for knowledge in books. I'd never looked in books before for those kind of answers before that.
Yeah. Well, book number 2, as you've mentioned, is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, published in 1937. And isn't it interesting how, all of these things that we're hearing about today have been around for a long time?
Yes. I mean, Think and Grow Rich, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I mean, all these basic principles uh, that explain how to have a good life, basically. Uh, and I was like, I came from a very poor family, so I was motivated to make money somehow and think and grow rich. That sounds good to me, right?
To a lot of people.
So,
Did,
yeah.
did it tell you anything that the previous book didn't?
They both had their own. They were almost in separate categories. Almost, they were similar, but they were focusing on the different areas. Different ways. And I honestly can't even remember. I really can't even remember what the Mystic Path to Cosmic Power talked about. I just remember thinking, that's the coolest name for a book I ever heard. And I read it, and I remember it just like really opened my eyes up to a lot of really great things,
Did
So
you keep the book?
I'm sorry.
Did you keep the book?
I did it for a long time, but I don't have a copy right now.
Mm. So, book number 3 is The Nature of Personal Reality, Specific Practical Techniques for Solving Everyday Problems and Enriching the Life You Know. And of course, it's by Jane Roberts, one of the Seth books, and it was published in 1974.
Yeah. Now, her first book was Seth Speaks.
Mm.
And that book, I was living in a yoga ashram at that time. I was 24 years old, somewhere in there, 24, 25. And Seth Speak really got my attention. And then, but when I read the nature of personal reality, it just explained everything about everything. I mean, it's a very, I don't know if you've seen it or read it, but it 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 had explanations for almost all human behavior and the afterlife and different dimensions and everything, and it just resonated with me. I mean, I have this feeling I get when I read books, like I could just feel like, this is truth. I mean, it may not be the total truth, but it's truthful. This is really real stuff. And so I remember I was working and living at this yoga community, and I was in charge of construction and maintenance for a couple of years, and I would read passages from that book to our whole crew of like 25 guys. I would just pick a topic for our morning meeting and just read about it and have everybody reflect on that, and we basically kind of read that together, and it was fantastic. I think that book is a gem. If anybody hasn't checked it out, I think it's amazing. It's an amazing book.
I haven't read that one. Did it give you the answer to happiness?
I mean, it did at the time. It gave me the answer, but I was fully engaged in the practices of being a yogi at this time. So I was already on this path, but it gave me a context for everything. It gives a context for your spirituality, like where it all fits together and how it all works. And that was, I don't know, I just was totally captivated with that book for a long time.
What attracted you to becoming a yogi?
Well, when I was, let's see, I think I was 19. Some friends of mine got a hold of some LSD, and they said, "Hey, you want to take some LSD?" And I'd heard scary stories about it, because they teach you in school that back then they would, people jump out of windows when they take LSD and they kill themselves, and we were all, but they said, "Nah, that's all bullshit," So I took it, and they didn't have the experience I had, but I had an experience of cosmic consciousness when I took it. I went directly to God, and I became God for like 8 hours. Basically, I had all knowledge. This is very interesting. I had understanding and knowledge of everything. There was nothing that I did not know. I could even read people's thoughts. So, but it was just a feeling like I had come home, and that led me to Ram Dass's book, Be Here Now, which led me to yoga, which led me to finding a teacher, and then moving into a yoga ashram.
And why did you leave?
Well, after living there for 10 years and being a celibate for 5 years, I realized that, it wasn't really, it never got me to where I really wanted to go. And I mean, I didn't regret being there. It changed my whole life being there. Actually, it transformed me, but I never really achieved that goal that I wanted, which was to have higher consciousness.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, book number 4, The Mahabharata by Kamala Subramanian.
Subramaniam. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is like a distilled version of a set of books, which are 17 books. It's like an encyclopedia set, which I have right behind me. I have the full translation in a bookshelf behind me here. And there's 17 volumes. That book is like about this thick, and it's just a version. It gives you basically the whole story. And she writes in a very delightful way, Kamala Subramaniam. But I ended up reading more and more of it. Like I have, like I said, the translated version. So you can take a scene out of her book and go in there, and it's like, it's 100 pages and not like 2 pages, the descriptions, everything. So I was living at a yoga ashram. This is a story of what happened 5,000 years ago, just before when Krishna was alive. And when there was a great battle, and there were 2 families that were fighting, and there was a great battle that basically wiped out almost every man on earth at the time. And the book itself is 200,000 rhyming verses. Okay. So if you can, in Sanskrit. So it was actually a song when it was first it just materialized, you might say. It was a song. It was sung. Do you understand? It was a Sanskrit song. Okay, and it's a long story how it got into publication finally, but it's the story of what happened back then. But the book itself, as you read it, and I'm talking about any version of it, just reading that book elevates your consciousness. It just happens. And it's just stories about the characters and what they did in their lives and what happened to them and the choices that they made. And, it takes you all the way through the death of Krishna and the death of the major characters in the book. And it talks about karma, like everything that happens. It tells you why it had to happen because of the karma from previous lives. It all hooks up. It's just like this. And when I read it, I felt like I must have been there. I felt like I was there. Like I just felt like that whole war. It's a whole warrior book. You're familiar with the Bhagavad Gita, right? The Bhagavad Gita is one very small chapter in the Mahabharata.
Mm.
And it's the scene just before the great battle, when Arjuna is sitting there and he sees all of his relatives on the other side and he has to fight against them and he has to kill them and he's having doubts about it. And Krishna is telling him why he has to participate in this battle and why he has to kill all these guys, who he knows. They're like related. So, but the whole book, it's an allegory for the whole spiritual path. So as one reads this book, your consciousness gets elevated. They say, they have a lot of sayings about it, but basically they say if you read the Mahabharata, you will go to some higher realms or something like that when you die or something like that, But I experienced it as like it just elevates me to read it. It's just like just reading these stories. It's hard to explain. It's hard to explain.
How long did it take you to read it?
Well, this book here you can read in like a day or two. I mean, a couple days. It's only about 400 pages. The names are all like these Sanskrit names, and they're really hard to pronounce, like Yudhishthira and Gatotkacha and all these other characters in the book. And they had beings back then that don't exist now. They had beings like the Rakshasas. Rakshasas could take on any form. A Rakshasa was in their normal form was really a gross, ugly kind of creature with a big mouth and kind of drooling looking thing. But they could assume any form. They could assume the form of a beautiful man or woman. And I can't even get into it. It's too much. It's too much.
You said that you're going to read it to your son when he's old enough. How old do you think he will need to be in order to
I think
enjoy
maybe
it?
7 or 8, he'll be ready for it. I used to read this to my wife when we first met.
Yeah.
She loved it. She loved me reading to her and the stories. We would just pick a small story out of this book. And this is a really condensed version of the book, her version of it. And there's several of them. There's several translations of this that are available. I like hers. It's more romanticized. It sort of retains sort of the love that's behind it, like the love nature that's actually meant to be instilled in this whole thing, because it's a very I don't know, it's a highly spiritual book. It's hard to describe, actually. My oldest son has read it. He loved it. I don't know if he reads it anymore, but he did read it for a long time. He's 30 now, 31. So,
Will you go back and read it again?
oh yeah, I think I will go back and read it again. I think I want to get the full translation out. Let's see here. I don't know if you could even see this. This is one of 17 volumes of the full translation of the book, and in English. So you can imagine how detailed it gets. during the battles, they describe every single arrow that was shot, what kind of arrow it was. There's like 30 different kinds of arrows that were used and who it killed and blah, blah, blah. And it's unbelievable. And to imagine that this was all a song that was sung and memorized. It was memorized. It wasn't put down in paper for a long time.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It was recited, and then somebody had to write it down. It
I
was
wonder
very
how long it would take to sing it.
Yeah, I think it would probably take a week of nonstop, something
Yeah.
like that, you know.
So
And
book
and Sanskrit itself is a magical language. I mean, just hearing Sanskrit, it's mantras. All mantras are Sanskrit mantras, right?
Yeah.
So go ahead. I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
So book number 5 is The Teachings of Don Juan, A Yaqui Way of Knowledge by anthropologist Carlos Castaneda, 1968.
Yeah, this was again another book I read while I was living at the ashram, and wow, that opened up. I saw other people reading it, and I thought, oh, what's with this book? It looks kind of cool. The covers were cool. So I started reading it, and I just got sucked into the story so deeply, and I felt there was truth there. It was a completely different way of looking at mysticism, spirituality. It's like a whole different path, and it included psychedelic mushrooms and this and that, as part of it. That wasn't the part, but I had taken psychedelics, so I had that connection. That was what got me on my path. So there was that connection, but there was a whole different explanation for how things are in the world, and it just made sense to me. Most of it really hit home. And I remember he teaches a thing. This is something that stands out in my memory. He teaches a technique called setting up dreaming, where you can take control of your dreams. And it's real simple. You just, when you realize you're in a dream, you look at your hands in the dream. And if you look at your hands in the dream, you then can take control of the dream and have it be whatever you want. And I practiced that, and it worked. I did it many times. And so, I just thought there was a lot of truth in that book, those books. And the story themselves are just amazing kind of spiritual lessons. It just really broadened my whole view of spirituality reading that book. To realize there's a whole different path, way separate from yoga and all this stuff and meditation, that's just as valid in its own way.
I think that so many people who read that book had exactly the same response that you did. I know I did. Yeah, really eye-opener. So
Yeah, and it's funny, I've had a lot of people that were his followers as clients that came and got readings from me. Some were his close followers, and I would ask them, well, what was it like, that kind of stuff. Anyway.
Yeah. Book number 6 is one that comes up again and again and again, and I'm always surprised at who brings it up. It is Initiation by Elizabeth H., and that was published in 1953. What was it about this book that made it one of your 10 best?
Well, it was like it explained so much about ancient Egypt and the pyramids, how they came about. She talked about some of the tools they had that they would use to levitate rocks and cut them and put them into place, and how they would someday be discovered and so forth. And there's still a dialogue going around about that something is hidden underneath the Sphinx and so forth. So it's just like this was about her life right back then as a priestess in the temple, and how she ended up dying because she fell in love with somebody, and all of her spiritual energy came down into her lower chakras and it burnt her out. Well, I had that experience myself. When I was at the yoga ashram, I had been celibate for 5 years, and I was starting to have these very intense meditations where Shakti was going up my spine. I'm not this kind of person. I'm not the kind of person that has psychic experiences normally like that, but I was having these. And right about that time, I fell in love with somebody, and it just like everything came down. It didn't burn me out, but it definitely it changed my whole life. And so I really related to her stories in this book. What happened to her, because I felt like I had gone through exactly the same thing. She was ultimately killed by one of the lions in the temple, which normally she had control over. But when her energy came down, she no longer had the consciousness that could control the lions that were all sitting around in the temples, or in the pyramids or wherever. So I don't know. It just explains so much, and I don't know if it's true or not, but it is. It doesn't seem. It seems very plausible, and it's written so well. And Elizabeth H. I think she's written other books too, right? I forget. I think she had some other books in different areas that kind of validated her as an author.
Mm,
It
yeah.
wasn't just the one book.
Do you remember how that book came into your life? What attracted you to it?
So, as I recall, some friends had read it and told me about it. I saw that book, like, how you're visiting somebody and I don't know about you, but I always look on their bookshelf.
Yeah, of course.
What do we
That's,
have here?
yeah,
Any gems here?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I saw it somehow, or I think somebody that I respected was reading it, and that got me to get it and check it out. Yeah.
Wow,
You
it's
know,
incredibly popular. It really is.
yeah, it was I think it was being passed around a lot at the ashram where I lived at that
Yeah,
time. Yeah.
yeah. Well, we're going to take a short break now. You're listening to a No BS Spiritual Book Club interview, and sharing the 10 books that had the biggest influence on his life journey is astrologer and author of the most accurate divination system I've ever come across, the internationally best-selling Cards of Your Destiny and Love Cards, by Robert Kemp. We'll be back with more from Robert Kemp after this break.
Om Times TV.
Maya Angelou once said that there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and when I'm not hosting Om Times Media's flagship radio show What Is Going On and the No BS Spiritual Book Club, I help people share their untold stories. Books are my life, my joy and my passion, and there is no greater reward than helping aspiring writers get their books out of their heads and into the hands of those who are waiting to read them. If you feel that you have a book in you but don't know where to begin, visit Sedgbeer.com. Click on the Work With Me tab and find out how my experience helping others tell their stories might be just what you've been looking for. That's Sedgbeer.com, SEDGBEER.com.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back. Robert Camp, this is where we get a little bit more pragmatic with our books. Number 7, No Money Down, How to Buy Real Estate with Little or No Money Down by Robert G. Allen, published in 1980.
I was living at the ashram, but I was starting to work outside the ashram. I was like the resident there, but I was no longer like full time on staff. A couple of guys that lived there also working outside. They came home one day and they had these packed stacks of binders with all kinds of papers, and they go, Robert, I got to tell you about this. We just came from a workshop with this guy Robert Allen, and we're going to buy like all this real estate. And I was like, how much did it cost? He goes, it was like $600 a piece to go to this all day thing. And I came, and I noticed there was just one book on the top of the whole stack. It was called No Money Down, and it was just a little book. And I went to the bookstore and bought the book. It cost me like $10. They paid $600. They never bought any real estate, either one of these two guys. I ended up buying 10 houses in a year using the techniques in the $10 book. It was just I was looking for something to support myself and my wife. And it was the perfect thing at the perfect time, and it has so many at the time. I mean, they still publish it. I have no idea what's in it now, but back then it had all these different creative ways of buying a property without having any money of your own in it. And the first property I bought was a 2-unit apartment building in this small town in Massachusetts. And I walked away out of the closing with a check for $20,000 in my pocket. Tax-free money also. So, just using the techniques in that book. So it was life-changing for me, in that respect.
So, do these principles, that he shared in the book, do they still apply?
I think a lot of them still apply. I think I don't know how things have shifted in the whole real estate industry, between then and now. I'm sure there are some things that are different, but I'm sure a lot of them still apply. Of course.
I imagine a lot of people will be going out.
It's like owner financing, for example, and it's getting the bank to finance it for more than you're actually paying for it, things of that nature. If it's worth it. I mean, I couldn't believe how fast I became a slumlord. Anyway, it was a great book, and I still have that book in my bookshelf.
And it transformed your life.
Yes, it did. It was a transformational experience on a positive way. I felt like it, I mean, I grew up without any money, and when I had that much money, it's more money than anybody in my whole family history ever had, from buying and selling real estate.
Yeah.
So it's not spiritual, but it's good information.
It is indeed. And, you can do a lot of spiritual things with that money.
Yes. I mean, I was still living in the area of the community and stuff at the time. I wasn't a resident there anymore, but all my friends were living at the ashram, and I was still going to see the guru and things of that nature. But I was, basically heading out, and now I had money, so it left me the freedom to choose where I wanted to go and where I wanted to live and so forth.
Yes, and that's really important.
It is. We all should have enough money, we should.
And number 8, Stick and Rudder, an explanation of the art of flying by the aviator, journalist and writer Wolfgang Longervish.
Something like that. Don't ask me to pronounce that.
In 1944.
Yeah, this book, I had the good fortune, like I wanted to learn to fly, and I had a friend. I mean, a guy that I met. I think he might have been a client. I can't remember, but he told me, okay, you got to get this book first of all, and then he used to sit down with me every week, and he never charged me for this, and he taught me all of the basic dynamics about flying. And this book is all about how flying really is, how it really works, how the air and the wind and the drag and and the lift and everything all comes together, and the pitfalls that happen to different pilots when they it was just like it was like the foundation of flying. And I did get my license, and I did learn to fly, and I even became an instructor for a while, and I just love flying. It was just like, oh, what a there's nothing like flying. There's just nothing. As my teacher used to say, my flying instructor, it's the most fun you can have with your clothes on.
Hmm. Yeah.
And you fly, and you just, I don't know, I flew for just the enjoyment of it, you know. And it was just such a wonderful chapter in my life. I think I put 500 hours in on airplanes before I was done. Yeah.
Book number 9, we are back to the spiritual now. Spiritual Enlightenment, The Damnedest Thing by author, teacher, and spiritual master Jed McKenna. This was published just 21 years ago, 2002.
Yeah, it's a relatively recent book, and I think it was only about maybe 8 years ago when I read it, and I just loved Jed McKenna. His whole writing was to cut through all of the spiritual bullshit materialism that's and like his thing was like, okay, if you have a spiritual teacher and they're offering to guide you, why not go up to them and ask them right off the bat, how many are your students have become enlightened? Shouldn't you know this ahead of time, instead of just going into some spiritual path blindly and just following the herd into some I mean, I've seen so many fake teachers out there. Almost every guru, including the one I was with, ended up having sex with girls and getting into trouble. I mean, I don't think I know of any that didn't do that. I mean, I met a lot of these guys, Satchitananda, Muktananda, my guru, who's Yogi Desai, and all of them got into trouble.
Yeah.
And so, were they enlightened? Were they really enlightened or not? Because when you are enlightened, you don't have an ego anymore.
No.
You just don't have any kind of. You typically don't have any kind of negative expression. You don't get upset about anything because there's nobody there. Anyway, that book was really eye-opening, and I just loved reading it because he was kind of a character. He's dead now, by the way. He passed away like 1.5 years, 2 years ago. But I also ended up having email conversations with him and joining in on a training thing that he had going on through emails later, after I read like all of his books. He has a series of books. So that's the very first one. It's like Spiritual Enlightenment, the Darndest Thing. That's what it's, that's like the title of it. Something like that. Spiritual Enlightenment, the Damnedest Thing or the Darndest Thing. Something like that.
Yeah. So book number 10, Astrology Plus by Hilarion, published in 1983. The best astrology book you've ever read.
Man, you've really done your research with all these dates and everything, Sandie. I think you have Jupiter and Gemini too, Sandie.
I don't actually. I have it in the House of Publishing.
Oh, do you? Well, you got something going on there, because I feel like you and I, similar love.
Yeah.
That love is there for knowledge. So I was just starting to study astrology. I had learned to do tarot readings, and I wasn't real happy with tarot. And I had bought one book on astrology about the lunar nodes, and I found a lot of truth there. And I was going around reading my friends, and then I don't know how I found this book. This book is written by a person that's not an astrologer. It's completely channeled. It's a channeled book. He knows nothing about astrology. But this book opened my eyes to what astrology is really about. Like it's essentially a spiritual astrology book. Okay. But it talks about the sun and different signs and different houses and what that means, and your rising sign and your different planets. And it just reveals things like that you never would imagine. For example, all Pisces and Scorpio people had killed themselves in a former lifetime. All of them, but for different reasons. The Pisces person in the past life did it to escape a situation that was unbearable. And that's why they come into this lifetime as escapists. You know, Pisces are known as the alcoholics and the people that escape in one way or the other. And the Scorpios did it to atone for something bad that they had done. And that's why Scorpio people tend to have sort of a brooding self-hatred that's like under the surface. I can feel it because I'm a Cancer. I can kind of feel, what's with the self-punishment thing. So, like when a person, just quickly, if a person, a lot of people who do these mass murders, they end up shooting themselves in the end. And I think a lot of them do it because they realize when that anger is dissipated, they realize, oh my God, they finally see what they did was so wrong, and they kill themselves right away because they deserved to die. They want to. So those people will come back as Scorpios. Among not all of, I mean, that's not the only reason a Scorpio will come back, and that's why Scorpios are unafraid of death. They're not afraid of death. Scorpio is a great person to have around. If you're in a life or death situation, they don't get upset. They can really be present. He explains all that in his book. It's an amazing book. It's the best book on astrology that I think exists. I've never seen anything better, and I've read a lot of them.
What does he say about Cancers?
Cancers, we have the gift of nurturing. Are you Cancer too?
No, I'm Gemini.
Oh, Gemini. Yeah. Well, Cancers have the gift of nurturing. Like the sun sign is a gift that you have from good karma from a past life, whatever that sign is. And Cancers have this gift of nurturing, like we just love to nurture. I have chickens. I can't tell you how much joy I get feeding my chickens, going out there and hanging out with them, petting them. I'm like a chicken. This has just happened 6 months ago. I'm crazy for chickens. But it's a Cancer thing.
Yeah.
But the downside of Cancer is we could get very attached to those that we are taking care of. The attachment comes in, and if something happens to them, it's really hard for us. Harder than it is for other signs. See. Yeah.
I have read many astrology books. I've been a student of astrology for about 40 years. Never a master.
You'll love this book.
Yeah, this one I haven't read, but I will.
If you can get a copy of it, they're out of print, but you can still get them used.
Yeah, you can get
different places. But yeah, and he has a whole series of books, and there were other ones that had some good stuff in it. But this is the one that really was for me that really delivered on some information. So I was doing readings when I found this book, and it just transformed my readings. I finally felt like I had something really good to say to people, like something that really could help them, because it explained so much on a deep level what these signs represented.
Well, that's your 10 best list. Let's talk about you, and let's talk about the science of the cards, because I find these cards absolutely fascinating. I've made it my life, a life job, if you like, to study astrology and numerology and human design and a lot of these self-knowledge, modalities. And the cards sit right alongside that because they tell you so much about yourself. And when I first read mine, I didn't believe, I couldn't see what it was saying about me. But then as I went through time, I could see that unfolding in me.
And that's cool. That's really cool.
Relationships. It's astonishing. How does it work?
Well, it's connected to the Earth's calendar. You see, the deck of cards, the common deck of cards, which we take for granted and don't think too much about, they match the calendar exactly. 52 cards, 52 days, 4 suits, 4 seasons, red and black, day and night. 13 cards in every suit, 13 full moons every year, or new lunar cycles. And then you take every card in the deck and add up the number on the card. And aces are 1, jacks are 11, queens are 12, kings are 13. Add up the entire deck, 365. No other card system does that. This is the original card system of all card systems. And there were ancient techniques using the cards that could predict, they could tell the fate of individuals born on different birthdays. That was kept secret for thousands of years because we went through a very dark period of history when you would get killed for talking about these things. And the first book ever published about this that revealed these things was in 1894, a book called The Mystic Test Book, The Mystic Test Book by Olney Richmond. And that was the first book, but then there's been like a couple books since then, but not a lot. It's still relatively unknown, even though I've been doing this for 30 years and I've sold, hundreds of thousands of books. It's still relatively unknown, this system, but it's so, as you know, it's so accurate. It blows your mind. It's like you can look in your past at things that happen and go, oh, let me see if the card is there for me moving, me getting married, me getting sick, whatever, promoted. And you go back and you go, oh my God, there it is. Look at that.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah.
There it is. Yeah.
Does that explain it better?
Kind of. The love cards, how, is that something that you created? Or had that been in existence for some time?
It was in existence, like how to find connections between different cards was there. It wasn't prominent, and it actually hadn't been developed not to the extent that it is now. Like a lot of what's in all my books came through the actual practice of using it and seeing that there was more to it. Like I was taught this fundamental way of doing the readings and so forth. I wasn't even taught anything about the relationship stuff, but there was a book that talked about it, and it evolved over time. I mean, there's so much about the system now that had not been distinguished. It hadn't been named. It hadn't been discovered. It was there, but it just hadn't been discovered. It hadn't been unveiled. And it came to me as I was using it, and I would test it. And before I would I never wanted to make a statement about anything being true until I had a chance to test it out and see that it's really accurate and blah, blah, blah. So, I was very cautious about publishing things or making a statement of this is true or that, because it's very easy to get off on a tangent and come up with a theory, and it really doesn't play out. Some of those theories just don't play out. So it's proven itself over time. So people who buy my books and do the readings, they get really accurate results. Yeah. That's
I've used it over and over again to look at the connections between me and people in my life, people I meet, people I'm, developing relationships with, whether it's a personal relationship or a business relationship. And I consult it now before I make certain decisions.
Yeah, so do I.
It is, but I know that it's an important thing to go.
Well, because first of all, you just by knowing their birthday, their card, what the positive potential of that card is and the negative potential. So what the gamut of expression could be. So like there's some cards that they tend to be on the side of the thief, right? Or lying, or whatever. And you want to know if it's not that everybody of that card is going to be that way, but you want to be on the lookout for that, right? And then you want to know how you connect with them. Are they going to be helpful to you? Or are they going to try to boss you around? Are they going to listen to you, or are they going to try to make you listen to them? are they your Saturn card, which is your greatest critic and the person that will withhold from you over and over again? And this is all unconscious, by the way. People think it's like personal. It is not personal. It's just the way the energy plays out, and there's nothing you can do about it. Like I've had couples that had this connection, and the girl says, "Yeah, I know we have this connection, but I think I can overcome this. I can really be conscious about it and not have it show up that way." And I've tried that too. It just doesn't work. It's going to end up, the Saturn person is going to end up being Saturn to you, which is your critic, and there's nothing you can do about that. And there's a really important connection called the moon connection, where one person is the leader, another is the support follower person. And if that's backwards in a relationship, the relationship won't work, even though you really like each other. You just can't get it to work because the energy is flowing the wrong way for what you intend to do with that relationship. So, I use it. I ask everybody their birthday, and I love knowing. I love studying people. I don't think I know it all yet. I still learn watching people and watching how they act and how their life plays out. And I compare that with their cards. And I still find it to be very fascinating myself.
Do you remember all of it now? I mean, is it all there in your head, or do you
Yeah,
still?
it's in my head. Yeah. And there's a formula that you can learn that's not really hard, that you can calculate a person's birth card from their birthday.
What card are
A
you?
little mathematical formula.
What's
Do you want to know? Do you want to know what it is?
Yeah.
Okay. The month times 2 plus the day. Subtract that from 55.
Oh goodness.
That's it. That's not that bad. It's third grade math. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's been a long time since I was in third grade. You multiply the month times 2 and add the day and subtract that from 55, and you get the number of the card in the deck. And the number of the card in the deck is Ace of Hearts is 1, 2 of Hearts, 3 of Hearts to the King. Then you go through Hearts, Clubs, Diamonds, and Spades. King of Spades is 52. So what's your birthday, Sandie? Let me do yours real quick.
June the 3rd.
June 3rd. So June 6 times 2 is 12, plus 3 is 15. 15 from 55 is 40. And 40, the 40th card in the deck is the Ace of Spades.
Yeah. I think I'd rather look at the book and let it tell me.
Well, the book has them all in there, but this is just for people that want to have the freedom to be able to just, be anywhere and know somebody's card without having to rush home and get their book out.
Yeah, it is. And tell us about the Joker, because I know a couple of people who are the Joker.
Yeah, the Joker is the enigma to this system. They cannot be read by this system. The Joker has a value, like every card has a number. That number that you get from that formula is called the solar value of the card. The Joker's solar value is 0. So that's December 31st. Okay. You look at people like Anthony Hopkins, Val Kilmer, Ben Kingsley. Those guys are such amazing actors. I mean, all of them. And there's others like John Denver and Barbara, well, not Barbara. Anyway, I can't think of her name right now, a pop singer. But they can be any card in the deck because they are no card. Yeah. They are no card, thus they can be any card. So we can't read them. We can't, we have yearly spreads, we have connections. Can't do any of that with those Jokers. Now, a lot of Jokers have purchased my books and bought my software because they find it very useful. They can't do readings for themselves, but they don't care. They kind of know they're special in a certain kind of way, and they're okay with it, But you can read them with astrology, but you can't read them with the cards. Yeah. It's so funny,
Yeah. It feels to me like all of these different modalities, I kind of see them a little bit like, the little circle that you get in Trivial Pursuit, and you put the little triangular pieces in and it makes one whole. And it feels to me that all of these modalities, you put them all together and you really, really can know an awful lot about yourself.
And other people, I mean, yes. I mean, I guess the number one benefit of any true system is to give us a non-judgmental look at ourselves. Honestly, look at ourselves, look at our traits, our karma, our good qualities, our weak qualities, and present that in a way that gives us hope for self-development,
Yes.
self-understanding.
Yes. Which is
I
the most important thing we can do while we're here.
yes, I feel the same way. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Do you, looking back, do you feel that, working with the cards was your destiny?
Yeah, I mean, when I first when I first made that discovery, when I was first introduced to the cards, I think it was less than a year's time after I got that first book that I realized this was my life's work. I had been looking for that. I had been looking for what and asking the universe, please tell me. I know I'm supposed to do something. I don't know what it is. Please help me find it. I think I did that for 10 years. So when it showed up, every cell in my body resonated. And I realized this is my teacher who taught me the cards in LA, Arnie Lean. He passed away like within a year of me meeting him. And he was writing a second book. He had written one book called What's Your Card? It's still available. But it's out of print. You have to get What's Your Card. But he didn't get to finish his work. And I thought, well, I'm gonna write that book that he wasn't able to finish. And I felt him with me as I was writing, you know, uh, and you know, I started out with nothing. I mean, I was photocopying books. I was going around bookstores in LA, convincing them to sell my book. I had to talk them into it. I had to give them a reading to prove that it was anything worthwhile. Because back then there was a lot of spiritual bookstores. There isn't now, but there used to be a lot of spiritually based bookstores back then.
Yeah.
So, it was very slow starting. And my book had a weird title. My first book was called The Atlantean Oracle. And that was a horrible title. Nobody knew what it was about, but it was how I got started. So, but I stuck with it. I told God that if you want me to keep doing this, you got to I'm not going to starve and do this. Okay. I don't need to be rich, but I don't want to starve. So take care of me. And it worked out that I did always have enough money to get by and to proceed forward. And then it started to grow exponentially at a certain point.
Yeah. People are always asking me, well, what's your 10 best list of books? And I always answer, well, I don't have a 10 best list. What I have is several categories.
You have categories.
In each of those categories. And these two books are the top of my divination, oracle, self-knowledge.
Oh, I love hearing that. Thank you. Glad to hear that.
Truly, I cannot recommend them highly enough.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for
Yeah.
following that path.
Yeah. It's been so much fun. I got to be the first person to actually put it into a computer and have it calculate all those spreads and print them out to make it easy to read them. That was just so much fun. I mean, I love computers and I love I love astrology and the cards just as much.
And you get to earn your living and live your life doing what you love. Isn't that wonderful?
Hang out with my chickens.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you give them card numbers?
Yeah, I wish I don't have their birthday. We do have the birthdays of our dogs, though. And we have 2 new dogs that are like a year old. And one of them just had a birthday. First time I've ever had a birthday of a pet. It's kind of fun.
Well, Robert Camp, thank you so much for sharing your 10 best list.
Yeah, you're
with
welcome.
your Spiritual Book Club. Robert Camp's 10 best list can be found at the NoBSSpiritualBookClub.com. And you can learn more about the science of the cards and astrology books, destiny and love cards, reports, personal consultations, courses and training programs that Robert offers at his website, 7thunders.com. That's it for this week. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and I'll be back at the same time next week with another 10 best interview for the No BS Spiritual Book Club. Till then, it's goodbye from me, and thank you again to Robert Camp.
You're welcome, Sandie. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.